just told me that she's like really into space, which I am too, so that happened. We have commonalities.
Hello, Write the Docs. I'm Sharon Campbell, and I'm here to talk to you about publishing wild-caught articles. Let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I run a team of editors at DigitalOcean, and we publish hundreds of articles from the community. The knowledge base that we publish to has about 1,300 tutorials right now. If you feel like checking it out, I have the link in that first bullet point. We publish primarily topics about open source software on Linux and FreeBSD. We publish about system administration and also are going to be getting into some development content soon. We have quite a few lovely in-house technical writers. One of them's here, you can talk to him if you like, but I'm going to be talking about how we publish content from our community submitters. We publish both kinds of pieces to the same site. So what is a wild article? Basically, it's an article that the author didn't have to write. A lot of us as professionals in documentation, we spend our days writing content because that's our job. I mean, we love it, but that's what we're paid to do. Even when we work with subject matter experts who don't consider themselves primarily to be technical writers, maybe it's an engineer, maybe it's a support technician, they at least still work for our company, and it's part of their job to help us out with the content. Not so with a wild article. Here's an example of a type of article that we publish. Last year, I was contacted by a developer who had created a Docker image for OpenVPN, and he was like, hey, I made this Docker image and I would love to write an article for you about it. And so we published that article. OpenVPN is a privacy software, an open source version of creating your own virtual private network, and Docker is a pretty popular container software which has to do with cloud hosting if you're not deeply involved in cloud hosting like I am. But yeah, this fellow wrote the project, contacted us, wrote the article, we published it, it's on our site. The other part of a wild-caught article is that an editor has to catch it. I am not going to be talking about creating a sort of free-for-all wiki where anyone can contribute to your site. There's been a lot of great talks in years past about that type of community. I'm talking about something that's a little bit more curated. I'm sure, have all read, forum posts or personal blogs where someone has written about a technology and all the information is completely correct and completely great, but is never something that you would feel comfortable publishing on your company's website. This process is about taking that type of document and turning it into something that you do want to publish on your company's website. So that's what a wild article is. Now I'm going to talk about why and how to catch wild articles. So first, why? Why would you publish from people who aren't even affiliated with your company? First of all, they know more. I'm sure there's going to be an exception here. I'm sure there's someone who's worked with the same product for 30 years and you just know more about it than anyone else in the world. Not the case at our company. We write about open source, everything. So there are thousands and thousands of people out there who know more than we do in-house, both in depth. They may have set up something very niche, very sophisticated, and in breadth. We have people using projects that a lot of people haven't heard of, but they may be really great, and we want to publish something about it. The other reason that we publish from our community authors is because it helps build our community. People who are willing to write for us are people who are very invested either in the technical content itself or in the company or both. And it's a great way to interact with people in your tech community. But it will not be cheaper and it will not be faster to publish articles this way. Before this talk, I went and looked at our task tracking installation, and I was embarrassed to see that it can take over 90 days from the time someone first contacts us about writing an article to actually publishing a piece of content. That may not be ideal. Most of that is fortunately not time spent actively on the article. It's time spent waiting for drafts to go back and forth. But this is not a super fast process. We also have a cadre of professional technical editors who work on this content. So, we have people on staff that we're paying similarly to the technical writers to help create this curated content. But it is about the community, the depth and breadth of knowledge, and connecting with people who want to write for you. So that's what it can do for you and your company. What about the authors? Why would they want to write? We actually sent out a survey to some of our best authors last year and asked them this question. Primarily, they are interested in sharing expertise. These are people who have figured out, something really cool in system administration, or maybe they've been working with some complicated software for years, or maybe they just spent 6 weeks figuring something out and want to save someone else the trouble. They also like getting paid. We pay our contributors. They also really love our swag. I was surprised at how much of a motivator this was, but isn't this an adorable sticker? People love our stickers and our t-shirts, and I brought a bunch of these stickers with me, so if you want to get one too, you can have one after the talk. They also enjoy the chance to work with a professional editor. A lot of these people have never published something professionally before, and they feel a sense of pride that their content looks so good at the end. And it helps them build reputation. Down here I have a quote from one of our authors who is in India. I have got a lot of clients through the DO articles I have written. It really helped him grow his IT business because he had published through us. And finally, your readers will benefit because they have an author who's just like them. As much as we are in the products and in the tech every day, we are in there to learn about it and to write about it, not primarily to use it. And these people who contribute content from the community are out there using it just like your readers are. So they have some great ideas about what to write about and what kinds of troubleshooting you might run into, ways to optimize, things to do next. So that's why. Now I'm going to talk about the how. I'll talk about how DigitalOcean does this type of content process. We solicit samples from potential authors. We collect topics and outlines. We review drafts, and we publish the content. To find authors, this is probably, if you're just getting started with this concept, where you want to focus first. We advertised quite a bit on social media when we first started this program. We told people, hey, we will pay you money if you write for us. And people said, oh, that's cool. And they started sending in samples. We also have a link to our Get Paid to Write program from our documentation website. We get a lot of people clicking through that. You could write a blog post announcing the project, particularly if you know that your blog has a decent readership. You could also consider turning a support ticket into documentation. You may or may not be able to convince the customer who was on the other end of that support ticket to be an author, but you could probably at least get their permission to turn that support ticket into a published piece. You can search on the web for people who are already writing about you. A lot of people like to post little tech updates on their personal blogs, or questions on Stack Overflow, or forums, and you may have people who have already written a lot about their processes with you that you can then contact and ask them to write them for you, not just about you. If you're tech lives on GitHub or some other publicly accessible area and you have people contributing code, they may also be willing to contribute docs. You can always ask. And finally, you can get your site listed on freelance writing websites. This is obviously a little bit hit or miss as to whether your contributors will have the correct technical expertise, but we've noticed that a lot of websites will list us as a place to make money by writing on the internet. So you've gotten some people to send in some samples. Now it's time to review them. This is the part that makes me feel the most like an actual newspaper editor, because I'm telling people, yes, no, great, not so much. We look for three things primarily from our technical writing samples. First of all, do they know what they're talking about? This is something that we've been refining over time. We used to just ask people for topic ideas. Now we actually ask them to submit an SSH key when they send in their sample. We've found that's a good shibboleth for, do you know enough about system administration to be useful? The other thing is writing ability. I find this is the easiest thing to judge because I'm looking at it constantly every day. I would say things like ESL issues, small typos, small grammar errors are actually pretty easy to correct as an editor, so I don't worry about those so much. We actually have quite a few submitters who English is not their first language. The things I really look for in writing ability are the ability to explain things well, a good sense of structure, a good tone. Those things are a little bit harder to correct as an editor. And finally, personality. Almost everyone who writes for us is absolutely wonderful. They love the tech. They love writing about it. They really want to collaborate. But every once in a while, you'll get someone who either is a little entitled or a little bit too needy. They send you 5 emails asking why their thing isn't out yet. And the best thing to do is just, kind of nicely let that person go. It's really not worth it. If you do have to turn someone down, make sure you do it very, very nicely. These are not people who are taking an English class with you. These are people who were going to give some of their time to write content for your website. They are your fans. You need to treat them very well. Right now, when we tell people thanks but no thanks, we send them a link to free stickers. In the past, we've also asked them to contribute to our Q&A area, to submit scripts, to see if they have a project that they want us to feature on our site, so that we still try to turn it into a very positive interaction, even if they don't have the skills to write for us. All right. So you've gotten someone who sent in a good sample. They seem like they know what they're talking about, and they seem like they can explain it pretty well. Now is the time to pick a topic. I always ask for topics with the sample because coming up with topics is a really difficult part of the process. If someone has come up with something that is both relevant to our technology and is something that no one has written before, and seems like something that someone would actually want to do, they're golden. I just say, yes, please write it, that sounds great. If one of those things is not true, people are generally very open to collaboration. They're invested in the process, they're invested in publishing something on your site, and they will usually be very happy to get feedback on how they could tweak their topic or what they could write about. This is also the time when I ask for an outline. This is not something that we used to do, but as time has gone on, we have noticed that asking for an outline really helps the draft process down the line. And the final thing is make sure you curate your topics. I once had someone write in asking to publish a beautiful ode to his mother. And while it was lovely, it had nothing to do with Linux system administration, and I had to tell him no. And then you wait for the draft. This is the part where if you have a large queue of authors, you're thankful that you don't have something to do right away. And if you have a small queue of stuff coming in, then you're like, oh my goodness, when are they going to send in the draft? And you wait for it. And then finally you get the draft, and it's time to test and edit the piece. This is the part that is the most like traditional technical writing. I treat all the drafts that come in as if they were something I had written myself. You test all the technical content. You check it for tone, you check it for structure, you check it for grammar, although I don't usually correct small details at this stage unless it's ready to be published. Be careful of the number of drafts that you go through with someone. I would say if you're getting onto more than 2 or 3 drafts, you're both just going to be so sick of it that the final piece is, not going to be worth the effort that you put in. When that comes up, sometimes I will finish off the piece myself with more work than I really should be putting into it, and then, not really continue to work with that author in the future. Or sometimes I'll just have to say, hey, if this next draft is not ready to go, like, I'm gonna have to drop the piece. Sometimes you'd be surprised, though, if it's a really difficult topic. It may be difficult and no one else has tackled that topic before, and it could bring you a lot of traffic for that topic just because no one was willing to tackle it before. That happened for me with a very naughty monitoring topic that I went back and forth with the author probably 5 times before we published it, and it ended up being a pretty popular piece. Then you wait for the final draft to come in. This is where some of that 90 days starts to add up. You can send polite reminders to people, but I don't know, there's only so much you can do. They're writing for you on their own time. And then you publish the piece. Yay! This is what we wanted all along. After you publish, make sure that you credit the author. I often ask if the author has a social media profile that they would like us to mention when we share the article. People really appreciate that. I also like to credit the editors. This is something that I suggested and won last year at my company. We used to only put the author's name on a piece, but now we also put the editor's name on a piece. Make sure you send the payment that has been agreed upon. This is something that you should hash out before it starts. We have a payment schedule that is pretty regularized. Our standard payout is $200. If we have a very short piece, it's $100. And if we have an update, it's $50. And if it's not going to be at that 200 level, I make sure I let the person know before they write it. And again, swag. I was really surprised how much people love swag, but everyone loves swag. Send them swag. Thank them again. This has been a process where they put in a lot of work, and as much work as you've put in, they have put in so much more. And finally, if you do any kind of metrics tracking for your content, this is a great time to tag this piece as, being from a community author and any other things that you normally track. Repeat authors. This is the best part of the whole process. So remember how I told you that it would not be cheaper and not be faster to publish content this way? Well, repeat authors is where you can start to approach that dream, that fantasy of getting great content that you didn't have to do all the work for. Repeat authors, basically you've skipped half of the process already. You know they can write, you know that they're responsive, you know that their technical content is decent, and you can basically keep sending them stuff to write and keep asking them for stuff that they want to write. We had a really great experience with our repeat authors just last month when Ubuntu 16.04 came out. For those of you who aren't in the cloud industry, Ubuntu is our most popular Linux distribution for our servers, and it's a big deal when a new version comes out. We have a lot of content about Ubuntu, and we wanted to get it all updated as quickly as possible. So we sent out a list of topics to our repeat authors, and a bunch of them got back to us right away, and we got out more content more quickly than we could have with just our in-house team. So repeat authors are the dream. Make them, love them, keep them close. All right, so if that sounds cool to you, how could you adapt this model for your company or your project? I'm obviously going to be getting a little bit more generalizing here, since I've only done this at one place and I know how that works, but I don't know how yours works, but I spent some time thinking about it, so maybe I have some good ideas. We'll see. If you are in the world of open source is a great fit for this model. There's already a culture of giving back, so it's not too hard to go from giving back code to giving back docs. It can benefit open source projects because a lot of them don't have a writer attached. If you can get people to write about a project that wouldn't otherwise have great docs, then the project wins too. It can also help out your readers because they will be exposed to things that they might not have learned about otherwise. And the community already expects collaboration. So sending notes, working on drafts, telling people what works and what doesn't work in the piece is all part of the culture already. Let's say that you don't work in open source and you still think this might be a good model. I would ask yourself a few different questions. First, how many people use your technology? If it's a very small number, you might have 1 or 2 people who are interested in writing docs about it, but it might not be that high. If you have a large user base, there are probably already people writing about how to use your product, whether it's their own notes for their internal use at their company or whether it's something on their tech blog. There's probably already people writing about it. Can your authors write something that they already know? If you have a sophisticated user base who are pretty comfortable with your product, or maybe they're not a general use, but they have a really interesting niche case, these are great people to tap to put their thoughts down on paper and get that content up on your website. Again, if your project is proprietary, you're basically going to be pulling from your customers to write about it. Again, consider support tickets. This might be a hybrid approach to doing the wildcaught articles. It may be mostly content from your support team, but you could solicit final solutions. If someone wrote in with a problem, it wouldn't hurt to ask, so hey, what was your final solution? Can I publish it so other people can do the same thing? And you can actually just ask what your authors would want. Money is a great incentive. Telling people you will give them money is always good. If you can't give them money, can you give them free credits or free support to contribute to your community? A lot of people could be interested in that. People, again, love swag. And it can also help them build their own reputation in the tech community. So if you can offer a way for them to show off what they know, that can also be motivating to potential authors. Another benefit of having people in your community that write for you on a piecemeal basis is that they can be a great candidate pool. Maybe right now you don't have the resources to hire a large internal documentation team, but if you have people out in the community who are already writing content, you might be able to bring them on board at a later date. So go catch some wild articles. Thank you.